Graham Whitmore could see himself standing alone, hands in his pockets, his tailored charcoal suit pressed, perfect, lifeless. Behind him, the office was silent, except for the low hum of the espresso machine and the click of Clara's heels on the hardwood floor. "You're going to be late," she said, placing a folder gently on the corner of his desk. Her voice, as always, was even, but her eyes, they held a subtle, maternal frustration. "The board wants your face at the gallery benefit tonight. You promised." Graham didn't turn. "Let them mingle without me." "It's for the community, not me." "You are the community, Graham," Clara said. "At least that's what you've branded yourself as." He finally looked at her. "I built a company, not a personality cult." She tilted her head. "You also built a wall around yourself. One Diane would have torn down by now. Her name." It didn't hurt like it used to, but it still echoed in his chest. "I'm fine where I am," he said quietly. "No, you're not," she replied, softer now. "You're lonely, Graham. That's not strength." She left the folder and turned without pressing further. The elevator doors sighed open and swallowed her presence. He stood for a moment longer, watching the storm blur the city, before finally moving toward his desk. Inside the folder, contracts, event summaries, a printed article titled "Harbor Link Faces Backlash for Board Homogeneity." The red marker circled one quote: "Whitmore's company looks more like a private club than a community leader." He exhaled sharply and rubbed his temple. That wasn't what Diane wanted, not what they started. She'd believed in neighborhoods, not networks. He shut the folder and left the office. Downstairs, the world changed. Noise, wet pavement, umbrellas clashing on corners. A city pulsing under pressure. He stepped into the back seat of his car, gave no destination, just motioned for the driver to go. Anywhere. He needed air. 3 miles west, in a world Graham rarely stepped into, Ivy Brooks counted crumpled singles behind the counter at Gorman's Diner. The tips were light. Tuesday nights always were, and her feet ached from a double shift. She flexed her toes inside her off-brand sneakers, ignoring the tightness in her arches. Across the counter, Marshall gave her a sympathetic smile. "You're a machine, Ivy. You need a break before you pass out." "Breaks don't pay hospital bills," she replied, half smiling, stuffing the cash into a paper envelope marked Jordan Meds. He paused, nodded. "How's he doing?" She hesitated. "Sleeping more." "Hurts less. But we're on the last bottle. You need anything? You tell me." "I need a miracle, Marshall." He chuckled, low and honest. "I'll put that on the special board tomorrow." Ivy slipped her apron off and headed out into the mist. The bus was late again. She pulled her hoodie over her hair, clutching the envelope in one hand and a plastic bag of leftover soup in the other. That's when it happened. A voice called out, "Miss Brooks?" She turned, startled. A man in a slick gray coat and polished shoes stepped out from under the diner awning. He held a leather briefcase, too nice for this part of town. "I'm with Inner Harbor Properties. You clean our offices, right?" "The Harbor Link Suite?" Her heart jumped. "I do the evenings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I need to speak with you." She hesitated. "About what?" "There's been a report." "Something missing." Her pulse quickened. "I don't understand." "It'll be quick. Just come with me. We need to clear some things up." Ivy looked down at the envelope in her hand. Her name. Her job. Her brother's medicine. "I didn't take anything," she said firmly. "No one's accusing," he said, though his tone felt otherwise. "We just need a statement." 20 minutes later, she sat across from a security officer in a small, windowless room in the Harbour Link lobby. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Her bag sat unopened on the table. Her name badge was clutched in her fist. "You logged out at 8:43 p.m. last Thursday," the man said, checking a report. At 8:51, an item was reported missing. A company watch, commemorative but valuable. "I didn't see anything." "No one's saying you did, but you were the last person with access." She looked at him. "You're saying that without saying it." The door opened. Silence fell. In walked Graham Whitmore, expression unreadable, presence commanding. The officer stood up automatically. "Mr. Whitmore," he greeted. Graham gave a slight nod, then turned to Ivy. "You're Ivy Brooks?" She straightened. "Yes. I'm the owner of the item in question, but this isn't how I wanted this handled." She blinked. "You're the CEO?" He nodded. "You work hard. You're honest. My office security overstepped." Ivy felt a mix of relief and unease. "So, I'm not in trouble?" "No," he said, then paused. "But I have a different kind of proposition." That got her attention. "I have a problem. My company is under pressure from the city. They say we're out of touch with the community. I need someone to help me fix that. Appearances, events. Support work." She frowned. "And you want me?" He didn't smile, but his voice softened. "You're real, grounded, and you remind me of someone." She crossed her arms. "What's the catch?" 1 month. Pretend to be my partner, just for the cameras. In exchange, I'll pay for your brother's medical needs. No strings, just a performance." Her mouth went dry. "This is insane." "Yes," he said, "but it's real help, and you need it." Silence. The hum of the lights. Her hands trembled slightly, curling around the envelope like a lifeline. "And if I say no, you walk out of here." "No consequences. But if you say yes, we both get something we need." She studied him, noticed the tightness around his eyes. The loneliness he tried to hide behind the perfect suit, the weight of someone who had everything except peace. Finally, she said, "If I agree, I have conditions." He nodded once. "Name them." "You don't touch me unless I say so, and I can walk away anytime." His jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. "Agreed." She stood slowly. "Then I guess we have a deal, Mr. Whitmore. Call me Graham." She didn't. Not yet. Outside, the rain had stopped, but something else had started. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Ivy had never been in a car that quiet, not just in terms of sound, but in pressure, like the silence was pressing in from all sides. The seats were buttery leather, the dashboard clean and modern, smelling faintly of cedarwood and something expensive she couldn't name. Outside the tinted windows, the lights of downtown Baltimore flickered like stars she wasn't supposed to reach. Graham sat beside her, one leg crossed over the other, scrolling through his phone with a deliberate calm that only made her more uncomfortable. Not a word since they left the office. Not even a glance. "So," she said finally, breaking the silence, "where are we going?" His thumb paused mid-scroll. "My condo. You'll stay there while we're under contract." She looked over sharply. "Excuse me? It's simpler. No commute, controlled environment, safer." I didn't sign up to be locked in a tower. He turned to her, expression unreadable. It's not a tower, it's a penthouse, and you're not a prisoner. But I'm not your possession either. His jaw flexed. You're right. I'm sorry. That surprised her. She looked down at her hands. Her nails were short, a little chipped. Hands that worked, hands that cleaned. They didn't belong in a place with floor-to-ceiling views and champagne-colored walls. I just don't want to be paraded around, she murmured. You won't be, he said. You'll be introduced. To who? Investors. City partners. The press. Ivy exhaled slowly, the weight of it setting in. This is bigger than I thought. Of course it is. The car pulled up in front of a sleek high-rise by the inner harbor, all glass and steel, the kind of place she used to walk past and wonder what lives happened behind those polished doors. Now she was stepping inside. The lobby glowed in soft gold lighting. A concierge greeted Graham by name. No surprise there, but when he turned to Ivy and said, "Welcome, Ms. Brooks," she almost laughed. "This way," Graham said, holding the elevator. Inside, the elevator was all mirrors and brushed silver. Ivy avoided looking at her reflection. Her jacket was damp, her jeans faded. She looked like what she was, a girl who didn't belong. "You really think this is going to work?" she asked, eyes fixed on the glowing floor numbers. "I think people see what they're told to see. And what are you telling them to see in me?" He didn't answer right away. The elevator dinged. His condo opened into a vast open space, walls of windows, clean lines, quiet elegance. A grand piano sat untouched in one corner. The kitchen gleamed like it had never been used. The air smelled like nothing. Perfect. Controlled. "You can sleep in the guest suite down the hall," he said, setting his phone on the kitchen island. "We have a photo shoot tomorrow. You'll be fitted in the morning." "Fitted?" she echoed. "For clothes." "You can't go to events in diner sneakers." Her cheeks flared. "You're saying I'm not good enough. I'm saying the world you're stepping into plays by different rules. And you're the one who writes them." His eyes locked with hers, calm, unreadable, but intense. "No, I just learned how to play to win." She looked away first. He poured himself a glass of something dark. Maybe bourbon, maybe just expensive soda. He didn't offer her any. Instead, he leaned against the counter, watching her like she was a puzzle he hadn't decided whether to solve. "Why me?" she asked, voice low. "You could have picked someone polished, a model, an actress." "That's exactly why I didn't." She blinked. "I'm not following." Graham walked toward the windows, drink in hand. The city reflected in the glass behind him, twin versions of everything. "My late wife, Diane. She believed in impact. Not image. She thought community meant showing up, not just signing checks." Ivy tilted her head. "And you think I'm like her?" "No," he said quietly. "I think she'd admire you." The words hit her in a place she didn't expect. "And you?" she asked before she could stop herself. He turned to her. "I think you don't even realize how strong you are. And I think that terrifies people." Her breath caught. "I'm not trying to scare anyone," she whispered. "No," he said. "You're just being you. That's the most dangerous kind of person in a room full of masks." They stood in that silence for a beat too long. The kind that stretches into something else. Finally, she shifted. "I need to call my brother." He nodded. "Landline's on the desk. I'll give you privacy." She picked up the phone, fingers trembling just slightly. It had been a long day, longer than she could explain. Jordan, she said when he answered. Hey, Ivy, he replied, voice thin but warm. You sound weird. Are you okay? I'm good, she lied. I'll be staying somewhere else for a little while. Where? She hesitated. Downtown. A pause. Like in the city? Yeah. Another pause. Did you get a new job? Sort of. I'll tell you more tomorrow. Okay. Ivy? Yeah? You sound different. Not bad, just different. I'm just tired, baby. I'll call you tomorrow. Love you. Love you more. She hung up and stood for a moment, grounding herself in that voice, that purpose, her brother, her reason for everything. When she turned around, Graham was gone from the room. A soft light glowed from down the hallway. In the guest suite, she found a folded set of clothes on the bed. A card beside them read, "Tomorrow begins early." Wear these. No signature. Just the familiar, clean handwriting. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked out the window. The city glittered, alive and loud, and so far from her world it felt like a movie. But this was real. And it was happening. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, wrapped in silence and the hum of something unknown, she let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe her life had already started changing. The morning light hit like truth, clean, sharp, and unforgiving. Ivy blinked against the brightness pouring through the wall of glass in her suite. For a second, she forgot where she was. The sheets were too soft, the silence too complete. Then her eyes landed on the clothes folded on the ottoman, a sleek cream blouse, tailored high-waisted pants, and a note attached. Driver picks you up at 8:30, breakfast if you want it. Gee. She stared at the handwriting for a moment. Unrushed, measured. Just like him. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled faintly of espresso and toasted almonds. Graham stood by the counter, sleeves rolled up, reading from his phone, steam curling from the mug in his hand. It was the first time she'd seen him without the armor of a full suit, and somehow he looked even more like a man built from glass and concrete. Hard edges, polished surface, but probably cold inside. "Morning," she said, voice low. He looked up and nodded. "Coffee?" "No, thanks." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Didn't expect you to still be here." "I adjusted my schedule," he said simply. "I thought we should go together." "First impressions matter." "You mean for them," she said. "You already made yours with me." His lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "And what was it?" "That you're used to people doing what you say." He took a slow sip, then set the mug down. "Am I wrong to assume you're doing what I asked?" "I'm doing what I chose." His eyes lingered on hers for a beat. She didn't look away. Outside, the town car waited. Inside, silence once again draped over them like a second coat. But this time, Ivy didn't feel the need to break it. She watched the city pass by. The cracked sidewalks, the brick row homes with stoops worn down by generations, the painted murals that told stories no one paid enough attention to. She used to be part of that. Maybe she still was. At the boutique, everything smelled of lavender and money. Soft jazz hummed through speakers as a stylist approached, all smiles and high heels. "You must be Mrs. Brooks," she said brightly. "We've pulled several looks for the luncheon this afternoon. Mr. Whitmore has excellent taste." Ivy's eyes slid to Graham. "Does he?" He raised an eyebrow. "Try not to scare the help." "I'm not the scary one," she muttered. The stylist guided her to a private dressing suite, handing her a series of dresses that looked like they belonged to a senator's daughter, not a girl who scraped gum off diner tables. She tried on the first one, too stiff. The second, too revealing. The third, a deep green wrap dress, felt oddly right. It hugged her without clinging. flattered her without pretending. She stepped out. Graham looked up from his phone, and for once his posture changed. Subtly, his gaze lingered a beat too long, flickering from her shoulders to her waist, then back to her face. "That's the one," he said. The stylist clapped her hands softly. "Perfect. You look elegant, Ivy." Ivy glanced at the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked polished, confident, but the weight behind her eyes, still there. Still watching. Back in the car, Ivy adjusted the hem of her dress. "You didn't say where we're going." "A city council charity luncheon. My company's a lead sponsor. Let me guess, a room full of people who drink their water from wine glasses and can't spell Subway." He didn't smile, but his voice softened. "Most of them have never seen the side of the city you live in. That's why this matters." She looked out the window. "Then don't parade me like proof." "I'm not," he said. "I'm asking you to be the part of the story I forgot." That silenced her. The event was held in a restored historical library, polished floors, stained glass skylights, centerpieces made of fresh hydrangeas. Ivy walked in beside Graham, her hand lightly resting on his arm, just as he'd coached her. The moment they entered, heads turned. Eyes followed. "Smile," he murmured through clenched teeth. "I am smiling." "Then maybe mean it." She forced something onto her lips. A blend of nerves and defiance. It would have to do. They mingled. Graham shook hands, gave short nods, exchanged greetings with practiced ease. Ivy stood beside him, nodding when expected, laughing when appropriate. But her eyes scanned everything, the layers beneath the pleasantries, the way people looked at her like she was either decoration or distraction. During a lull, a woman approached, elegant, blonde. The kind of expensive beauty that came from generational wealth and weekend facials. "Graham," she purred. "You didn't tell me you were bringing someone." He stiffened slightly. "Vanessa, this is Ivy Brooks." Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Charming." "What firm are you with?" "I'm not," Ivy replied. "Oh? Then, what exactly do you do?" "I wait tables. And clean offices, sometimes back to back." Vanessa blinked. "How quaint." "I guess it depends on your definition." Graham cut in smoothly. "Ivy's also helping with some of our community initiatives. She has first-hand insight." Vanessa's gaze flicked between them, something calculating behind her lashes. "Of course." "You always were a fan of hands-on experience." "I'm a fan of authenticity," he said sharply. Vanessa smiled thinly. "Well, best of luck." She drifted off and Ivy turned to him. "That your ex?" "Something like that." "You have a type?" He looked at her. "Apparently I'm still figuring that out." They didn't speak again until they were back in the car. "I can't be what she is," Ivy said quietly, watching her reflection in the window. "I don't want you to be. I'm not trained for this. I say the wrong things. I wear the wrong shoes. You wore the right dress. That's not what I meant." "I know." Silence stretched. Then he said, almost too quietly, "You stood your ground. That mattered." She turned to him, "Even if it cost you something?" His eyes found hers. "Sometimes the cost is the point." The city lights danced across the windshield as they drove. Two strangers in a car, pretending not to care, pretending too well, but beneath the surface, something shifted. And neither of them wanted to say it aloud. Not yet. The silence between them lingered long after they returned to the penthouse. Ivy stood in the entryway, arms crossed, eyes tracing the marble floor like it might offer a way out. Graham poured himself a drink, something amber, in a short glass, and didn't ask if she wanted one. Maybe he already knew she wouldn't accept. He leaned against the counter, watching her with the same guarded expression he always wore in public, but they weren't in public anymore. "You handled yourself well today," he said at last. She looked up, slow and measured. "Define well." "You didn't back down. You didn't flinch." "I wasn't raised to flinch." His lips twitched. Almost a smile, but not quite. "Vanessa's not subtle." "No," Ivy said, "but neither am I." There was a beat of quiet. Then he nodded toward the hall. "Come on. There's someone I want you to meet." She followed him down a hallway lined with art. Nothing flashy, just thoughtful. Moody. A mix of color and restraint, like everything else in his life. He stopped at a door and knocked once before pushing it open. Inside, a woman sat in an armchair by the window, a book resting open on her lap. She was in her 60s, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a low bun and eyes that saw too much. Her presence filled the room, not with noise, but with stillness. "Clara," Graham said, "this is Ivy Brooks." Clara set the book down and stood slowly. "So this is the girl making all the headlines." Ivy didn't shrink. She extended her hand. "Nice to meet you." Clara took it. Her grip was firm. "You have a strong handshake. That's rare." "I wash a lot of dishes," Ivy said, eyes steady. Clara's mouth lifted at one corner. She gestured to the chair across from hers. "Sit. I want to look at you properly." Ivy sat, smoothing her dress as she did. Graham lingered by the door, hands in his pockets, eyes narrowed, like he was watching a high-stakes negotiation. "I imagine this is awkward for you," Clara said. "A little," Ivy admitted. "But I've had worse." "Good, because it's not going to get easier." Clara studied her. "Do you know who I am?" "Your last name is Whitmore." "And your picture's in that award photo on the wall." Clara nodded. "Diane was my daughter." The name landed like a soft hammer, quiet but heavy. "I'm sorry," Ivy said gently. "She's the reason he built this company, and the reason he nearly burned it down after she passed." Ivy glanced toward Graham. He didn't flinch. "I'm not trying to replace anyone," Ivy said. "No, but you're standing in her echo." Clara leaned forward. "So I need to know, Ivy. Are you here to help him or to help yourself?" Ivy met her gaze without blinking. "Both." Clara let out a quiet breath. "Honest." "That's refreshing." "I didn't ask to be part of this," Ivy continued. "But now that I am, I'm not going to pretend to be less than who I am just to make people more comfortable." Clara's eyes softened just slightly. "Diane would have liked you." "She had grit." "So do I," Ivy said. Behind them, Graham finally spoke. "We should let Clara rest." Clara stood. "One more thing, Ivy." "Yes?" "If you stay, don't lose yourself. This world has a way of sanding off edges until you forget why you were sharp to begin with." Ivy nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you." Back in the hallway, Graham looked at her. "You didn't have to go in there. She needed to look me in the eye. I get it. She's not easy. She's not wrong either." Graham walked past her, slow and quiet. "Do you want to get out of here for a while?" "Out of the penthouse?" He turned back, eyebrow raised. "You afraid of fresh air?" She followed. They ended up walking the inner harbor, city lights reflecting off the water, the scent of fried seafood and salt on the breeze. It felt almost normal. Almost. "Why me?" she asked again, this time quieter. "I told you." "No," she said. "You gave me a polished answer. I want the real one." He stopped, leaning on the railing, looking out at the water like it held something he'd lost. "I saw you once before," he said. Months ago, you were walking out of the hospital with your brother. It was raining. You had one umbrella, and you made him take it. You were soaked, but smiling. Ivy's breath hitched. I didn't see you. I was visiting Clara. She'd had a procedure. I watched you cross the street and disappear like you had a mission. She looked at him, stunned. I didn't know your name. But I remembered your face. Ivy swallowed hard. So all of this? I thought if I ever met you again, I'd offer you something. A chance. A way out. I didn't expect this. This. He turned toward her. That I'd care whether or not you took it. She held his gaze, the tension stretching like string between them. I don't want to be someone you rescue, she said. I don't want to rescue anyone, he replied. I just want to stop feeling like everything I touch turns cold. They stood there, the city pulsing around them, and for the first time Ivy saw it, the grief he carried, the silence that lived inside him. He wasn't cold, he was frozen, and maybe she was the first warmth he'd felt in a long time. She looked out at the water, then back at him. I'm not a fantasy, Graham. I know. And I don't need you to fix me. I know that too. She took a breath, then offered the smallest smile. But I wouldn't mind seeing how the other half lives. For a little while longer. His lips lifted. Just a little. Then let's give them a show. The morning headlines were already buzzing by the time Ivy came downstairs. Her phone vibrated on the kitchen counter next to a plate of untouched toast and a small, perfect omelet she hadn't asked for. She glanced at the screen. A news alert. Graham Whitmore debuts new partner at council event. Community or PR play. She didn't click it. She didn't need to. Graham was already at the dining table, scrolling through his own device, his expression unreadable. Shirt sleeves rolled, tie forgotten. Coffee cooling beside him. You saw it? She asked, pouring herself water. Top of every feed, he said, still not looking up. Vanessa's doing. Ivy's stomach knotted. She planted it? Of course. That smile yesterday. Performance. Her fingerprints are all over this. What exactly did she say? He turned the phone so she could read it. The article was polished but sharp. Sources close to Whitmore suggest his new companion may not have the pedigree expected of a HarborLink partner. One insider described her as charmingly unrefined, if wholly miscast. Ivy stared at the words. Charming. Unrefined. Miscast. She set the glass down harder than she meant to. She called me a roll. Graham's jaw flexed. She knows exactly what she's doing. Then why not stop her? He finally looked at her. Because if I fight back now, it becomes a scandal. If I ignore it, it fades. But it doesn't fade for me. He held her gaze for a long moment, then said quietly, No, it doesn't. Silence hung in the air, thick and uncomfortable. Ivy looked away first. I need air, she said, grabbing her coat. Don't go far, Graham replied. We have a meeting at 10. She didn't answer. The door clicked softly behind her. Outside, the wind had a bite, sharp. Honest, she walked aimlessly down the harbor walk past joggers and tourists until she found a bench near the water. She sat, the metal cold beneath her, her eyes fixed on the gray sky, swallowing the sun. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the words in that article, or how easily they echoed things she already feared, miscast. Maybe this had always been a part she was destined to fail at. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Marshall. M. Saw the article. You okay, kid? Her fingers hovered over the keys. Been better. M. You don't owe them anything. Just remember that. She stared at his message for a long time, then slid the phone back into her pocket. By the time she returned to the penthouse, the meeting was already underway. She heard voices from the conference room Graham kept just off the living area, soft murmurs. The clinking of coffee cups. She walked past, trying not to listen, but one voice stopped her cold. "Vanessa." "I'm just saying," she was saying lightly. "Optics matter. When you're trying to convince the city you're invested in equity, it helps not to look like you dragged someone in off the corner." Ivy didn't move. Another voice, male, chuckled politely. "She does seem out of sync with the brand." Graham's voice cut through, colder than ice. "You're talking about her like she's not a person." "I'm talking like someone who understands public image," Vanessa replied. "And I'm telling you to stop, or excuse yourself." A pause, then footsteps. The door opened. Vanessa stepped out, perfectly composed, lips curved in that same subtle smirk. "Well," she said, spotting Ivy. "Speak of the muse." Ivy straightened. "Is this what you do now? Whisper in hallways?" Vanessa tilted her head. "You're holding up better than I expected. Good. You'll need that spine. Why don't you say what you really mean?" "Oh, Ivy," she said with a sigh. "I think I already have. Everyone just heard it louder this time." Ivy didn't blink. "Tell me, what's harder for you? That I'm here? Or that he asked me and not you?" For the first time, Vanessa's smile cracked. Just slightly. She turned and walked away without a word. Ivy exhaled, long and quiet, then stepped into the meeting room. Graham was standing by the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out like the city might answer something for him. "You didn't have to defend me," she said. "I didn't do it for you," he said. "I did it because they were wrong." She nodded slowly. "But they're not going to stop." "No," he agreed. "They'll push. They'll whisper. They'll twist what we are into something they understand better." She moved closer. "And what are we?" He turned to her, finally. The light caught his face, casting one side in shadow, the other in soft glow. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'm not ashamed of it." She stared at him, something deep and unfamiliar rising in her chest. "Neither am I." There was a moment then, quiet, charged, where they simply stood in each other's orbit. Not touching, not pretending, just seeing. And being seen. The tension broke only when his phone rang. He stepped away to answer it, and Ivy slipped out, heart pounding in a rhythm she didn't recognize. Later that afternoon, a box arrived at the penthouse. No note, no name. Just a return label from a small tailor in East Baltimore. Inside was a dress. It was navy. Simple, elegant, but sewn with care and detail. Handmade. Not for cameras, not for pretense. Ivy ran her fingers over the fabric. At the bottom, stitched into the hem, was a tiny embroidered name, Diane. She turned to find Graham in the doorway watching her. "She designed it," he said quietly, "years ago. For a benefit she never made it to. It's beautiful. She'd want someone like you to wear it." Her throat tightened. "Why?" "Because she believed in stories like yours." She looked down, blinking fast. He stepped forward. "I know this world isn't easy, and I know I've made it harder, sometimes without meaning to." She met his eyes. "But you see me. I do." The city lights blinked on below them, one by one. And in that golden hush between day and night, Ivy knew something had shifted, not in the way people saw her, but in how she was starting to see herself. The dress fit like a secret. Ivy stood in front of the mirror, fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the navy fabric over her hips. It moved with her, not stiff or showy, but alive, like it belonged to her body before she'd even touched it. The embroidered name at the hem was hidden, but its presence pulsed against her skin. Diane. She hadn't known the woman, but she could feel her everywhere. In the quiet elegance of the dress, in the way Clara's gaze lingered just a second longer now, in the stories Graham never quite finished. Tonight was the first major gala of the season. HarborLink was one of 3 presenting sponsors, and the event was a who's who of Baltimore's political, corporate, and social elite. Ivy was expected to stand beside Graham, poised and polished, as though she belonged there. Part of her wanted to disappear. The other part, the one Diane might have seen, stood a little taller. She stepped into the foyer just as Graham adjusted his cufflinks. He looked up, froze. He didn't speak right away. Then, simply, "You look right." She tilted her head. "That's not exactly poetic." He took a slow breath, stepping closer. "I mean it. You look like this world would have to bend to fit you." That somehow landed harder than any compliment she'd ever heard. "Don't overdo it," she murmured, but her voice cracked just enough to give her away. At the gala, chandeliers glittered above a ballroom dressed in gold and navy, like the entire room had been made to match her. Photographers moved like shadows at the edges, their cameras flashing, catching every tilt of Graham's head, every step Ivy took beside him. She smiled when needed, laughed when prompted, but inside her nerves twisted like vines. Near the center of the room, Clara stood with a small circle of women, her posture elegant, her presence commanding. When Ivy approached, Clara turned and took her in with a long, silent gaze. "You wore it well," she said, her voice low. "I hope that's a compliment." Clara's lips curved. "It is. Diane would have approved." Ivy let the words settle in her chest like warmth. "Just remember," Clara continued, "it's not the dress that makes the woman memorable. It's how she leaves the room." Graham joined them moments later, gently placing his hand at Ivy's lower back, guiding her toward another cluster of guests. The contact was brief, respectful, but it lingered. Introductions blurred into one another. CEOs, council members, foundation directors, all with practiced smiles and glassy eyes. Ivy played the part, but her mind stayed sharp. Then she saw Vanessa. Across the room, draped in scarlet and sipping something clear, Vanessa met her gaze with a smirk that was too polished to be anything but rehearsed. And beside her stood a man Ivy didn't recognize. Tall, broad, expensive suit, with eyes that moved like he already knew everyone's secrets. "Who's that?" Ivy whispered to Graham as they crossed paths. "Gregory Alcott," Graham said under his breath. "Venture capitalist. Vanessa's new shadow. He looks slippery." "He is." Gregory stepped forward, extending a hand. "Mr. Whitmore." "A pleasure. And this must be the famous Ivy." Ivy shook his hand, cool but firm. "That's what they're calling me now?" "You've certainly sparked conversation," Gregory said, smiling with too many teeth. "I admire bold moves, especially the unexpected ones." "That's funny," Ivy said smoothly. "I admire people who mean what they say." Vanessa let out a low, amused sound. "Careful, Gregory. She's not just pretty, she bites." "I don't bite," Ivy replied. "I just don't let people talk about me like I'm not standing right there." Graham placed a hand on her arm, gentle, steady, not to silence her, to anchor her. Vanessa lifted her glass. "Well, I suppose we all play our roles. Some of us just wear them better." Graham spoke then, his voice firm. "That's enough, Vanessa." She shrugged. "Of course. Wouldn't want to disturb the illusion." They walked away in silence. Only when they reached the edge of the room did Ivy finally speak. "You said this wouldn't be a parade. It's not. It feels like a performance." "For them, for you. I didn't ask you to perform." "Then what am I, Graham? A statement?" "A symbol? A reminder of your wife's ideals?" He looked at her then, eyes searching. "You're not a symbol. You're the only real thing in this room." That caught her off guard. It was too honest, too close. She stepped back, needing space. Then stop putting me on display. I'm not trying to display you. I'm trying to protect you. By putting me in a dress with her name stitched into it. By letting people whisper while you stay quiet. His voice dropped. I thought the dress would make you feel seen. It made me feel borrowed. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was full of things unsaid. She turned away, needing air. Outside, the air was cool against her skin, sharp with night. The harbor reflected lights like a painting shaken loose. She stood there, arms folded, heart pounding. Graham found her minutes later, no jacket, no pretense. I'm sorry, he said quietly. She didn't answer right away. I thought this would help you step into the room. I didn't need help, she said, softer now. I needed to be invited. He nodded, hands in his pockets. You're right. She looked at him, really looked. Past the suit, past the success, to the man trying, failing sometimes, but trying all the same. You don't have to carry her, she said. Diane, you don't have to prove you're still living up to her. His voice broke a little. Sometimes I don't know who I am without her shadow. You're someone who wants to do the right thing, she said. That counts. He looked at her, the edges of his expression softening in the lamplight. I meant what I said, he told her. You're the most real thing in this room. You don't belong behind me. You belong beside me. Ivy's breath caught, and maybe, just maybe, she started to believe him. Because for the first time since this started, she didn't feel like a guest in someone else's story. She felt like she'd just stepped into her own. The kitchen was quiet, the kind of quiet that held its breath. Ivy stood barefoot on the cool tile floor, her hair twisted into a loose bun, sleeves rolled up past her elbows. A bag of groceries sat open on the island, fresh herbs, eggs, crab meat, and breadcrumbs. She moved with purpose but not confidence. This wasn't her territory. Not yet. Graham leaned in the doorway, watching her with folded arms and a look somewhere between amusement and concern. You sure you know what you're doing? He asked. She didn't glance up. Not even a little. He chuckled. That's comforting. She shot him a dry look over her shoulder. I grew up watching my mom make crab cakes every Sunday after church. I never actually made them. I just watched. Didn't think of starting with something safer, like toast? Don't tempt me. He stepped into the room, barefoot too, sleeves rolled to match hers. There was something oddly domestic about it. Two people in a penthouse kitchen trying to pretend they weren't from different planets. What made you want to cook tonight? He asked. Ivy shrugged, mixing by hand. You've been feeding me catered salmon and kale for a week. I figured I owed you something in return. That's not how this arrangement works. Well, she said, looking up, maybe it should. He watched her for a beat longer than necessary, then opened a cabinet and pulled down plates. All right, let's do this your way. 20 minutes later, the kitchen was filled with the smell of butter and spice. Ivy hovered near the stove, flipping the patties with more caution than skill. You're hovering, she said without looking. I'm supervising. You're doubting. I'm protecting my kitchen. She turned toward him. Relax. I promise not to burn your palace to the ground, he smiled, a real one. The kind that didn't have an agenda. They sat at the island, elbows brushing as they ate. The crab cakes were imperfect, one a little scorched, another slightly mushy, but they were hers. And Graham didn't complain once. Not bad, he said, licking a dab of remoulade off his thumb. High praise. I mean it. These taste like something, like family. Her smile faltered just a second. He noticed. You all right? She nodded, pushing a piece around her plate. I just haven't heard that word in a while, at least not in a way that felt good. He didn't press. Instead, he stood, walked over to the wine fridge, and poured them each a glass of something crisp and pale. He handed her one and lifted his. To new definitions, he said. She hesitated, then clinked her glass softly against his. To surviving the gala. They both sipped. Ivy let the coolness of the wine settle in her chest, balancing the quiet heat of the meal. I meant what I said last night, he said after a moment. You don't belong behind me, or beneath me. You belong exactly where you stand. She set her glass down slowly. That's not how people see it. That's not how Vanessa sees it. Or Gregory, or your board. I don't care what they see. You should. I care what you see. The words came out low, but they didn't waver. She stared at him, every instinct urging her to question the moment, to peel it apart until it lost its shape. But something in his face, unguarded, tired, maybe even a little scared, stopped her. You say things like that, she said softly, and it makes it hard to remember that this is just pretend. He didn't move, didn't smile. What if it wasn't? Her breath caught. You don't know me, she whispered. I'm learning. You're not ready. Maybe I'll never be. But I'm still here. She stood abruptly, taking her plate to the sink, her back to him now, shoulders tight. People like you don't end up with people like me. He walked to her, slow and careful. People like me? Rich, polished, educated. Free. His voice dropped. You think I'm free? She turned then, meeting his eyes. Aren't you? No, he said, stepping closer. I've built walls so high I forget there's a sky above them. You come in like a storm and remind me what it means to feel something real. Her breath shook. This isn't the plan. I don't care. We had rules. We can change them. She shook her head, trying to stay upright in a conversation that felt like it might knock her over. I'm not ready, she whispered. He stepped back, giving her space. Then I'll wait. She blinked. Slowly. You'd really do that? Ivy, he said, voice steady. You make me want to. Silence pressed around them again, thick and full. Then her phone rang. She startled slightly, stepping away to answer it. Her heart sank as soon as she saw the caller ID. Marshall, she answered. Is Jordan okay? There was a pause. He's all right now, Marshall said. But the school called me. He had a dizzy spell. They sent him home early, said he tried to hide it. Ivy closed her eyes. Did he take his meds? Only half. Said he was saving them. Didn't want you worrying about affording the next bottle. She sank onto a stool. The air knocked from her lungs. Ivy, he needs a refill. Tonight. I know you're busy, but I'm coming, she said, standing quickly. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She ended the call and turned to find Graham already moving toward her. I'll have the driver ready in 2 minutes, he said. You're not going alone. I have to handle this, and you will, he said. But you don't have to do it by yourself. She hesitated, pride clashing with gratitude. He met her eyes. No conditions. No strings, just let me show up. Her walls didn't break, but maybe, for the first time, she opened the door. She nodded, and he reached for his coat. The drive to West Baltimore felt different this time. Ivy sat in the back seat of the town car, the city outside her window slipping past in blurs of flickering streetlights and old row houses with curtains drawn tight. The neighborhood was familiar, every crack in the sidewalk, every corner bodega. But tonight, it all felt further away. Like a memory she wasn't ready to let go of. Beside her, Graham said nothing. He didn't check his phone. He didn't fill the space with questions or reassurances. He simply sat there, present, a quiet kind of anchor in her storm. She glanced over once, catching the soft lines of concern on his face in the glow of the passing headlights. You don't have to stay long, she said, breaking the silence. I'm not here out of obligation, Ivy. I know, she said, but this part of my life. It's messy. It doesn't look good in press photos. Then it sounds like the part that matters most. She turned away, heart aching from the simplicity of his truth. They pulled up outside her apartment building, a 3-story walk-up with rusted rails and a flickering security light. The hallway still smelled faintly of bleach and old takeout, familiar, heavy. Marshall opened the door before she knocked. "Hey, Ivy," he said gently, stepping aside to let them in. "He's in bed." Still a little pale but resting. Did he eat? Half a grilled cheese and 2 sips of orange juice. I didn't push. She nodded, already peeling off her coat. "Thank you. I'll give you all some space." As he left, Graham lingered in the living room, quietly taking in the surroundings. The sagging sofa, the mismatched chairs, the photos on the fridge, Jordan in every one of them, grinning wide. Ivy went to the back bedroom. The door creaked when she pushed it open. Jordan lay curled under his blanket, eyes half closed but awake. "Hey," she whispered. Kneeling by the bed, he turned toward her slowly. "Did I mess things up?" Her chest tightened. "Of course not. You left work for me. I'd leave a kingdom for you." He gave a small smile. "Your boss is gonna be mad." "I brought him with me." Jordan's eyes widened. "The boss?" She nodded. "He's in the other room. Want to meet him? Does he wear suits in his sleep?" Ivy laughed softly. "I think he might." Jordan hesitated. "Can he come in?" She rose, kissed his forehead and stepped back into the hall. "He wants to meet you," she said. Graham's eyes lit with something she hadn't seen before. Not ambition, not interest. Wonder. He followed her into the room quietly. Jordan tried to sit up straighter. "Hi." "Hi," Graham said gently, crouching near the bed. "I've heard a lot about you." "All lies," Jordan said with a weak grin. "I figured." Ivy watched them. 2 worlds colliding, not in conflict but in quiet understanding. Jordan asked questions. Graham answered without condescension. For a moment the room held a warmth that didn't come from heat. Eventually Jordan yawned mid-sentence. "Time to rest," Ivy said, tucking the blanket up to his chin. He looked at her. "You're not going back tonight, are you?" She paused. "Not yet." He nodded once. Then, looking at Graham, he said, "You should eat her cooking." "It's better than hospital food." Graham smiled. "Already have." "I lived." Jordan grinned, satisfied, then closed his eyes. Back in the living room, Ivy sat on the arm of the couch, rubbing her hands together. "He's a good kid," Graham said softly. "He's the reason I breathe." "I get it now." She looked up at him, tired but honest. "This is my life, the part I never show anyone, the one I was afraid would make you pull back. I'm not afraid of your truth, Ivy." She held his gaze. "Even if it doesn't come with polish and perfect timing, especially then." They sat in that soft quiet, the hum of a heater kicking on the only sound between them. Then Ivy's phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, but habit made her check. Her brow furrowed. "What is it?" Graham asked. She held the phone out. It was a link, another article, another smear piece. This one was worse. Ivy Brooks, fake heiress or real risk? With quotes from an anonymous corporate insider claiming she had a sealed juvenile record. Claims about her fabricated persona and dangerous manipulation of a grieving CEO. Ivy stared at the screen, color draining from her face. "I've never—" Her voice cracked. "That record. I was 16. It was a misunderstanding." "I was cleared." Graham's expression darkened. "This is Vanessa. It has to be. But people won't care." Her hands were shaking now, They'll just see what they want to see. He stepped closer, his voice firm. Then we show them who you really are. How? When every article is a dagger? With the truth. She laughed bitterly. Truth doesn't trend, Graham. Scandal does. He took her hands, steadying them. Then we stopped playing defense. No more hiding, no more silence. I don't want to be your project. You're not. You never were. She stared at him. Then why are you still here? His answer was simple. Quiet, final. Because I believe in you more than I believe in any headline. Her breath hitched. And for the first time since this began, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she had something, someone to swim toward. By the time Ivy returned to the penthouse the next morning, a quiet war had already begun. 3 new articles, 2 anonymous interviews, 1 edited photo implying she had lied about everything, from her background to her relationship with Graham. Headlines danced across every gossip blog and business feed like sparks looking for dry kindling, and someone with access, had leaked the hospital bill Graham had paid for Jordan's treatment. Ivy stood in the center of the living room, the city stretching out behind her through the glass, heart pounding so loud it drowned out reason. She hadn't even taken off her coat. "This is what they think of me," she whispered. Graham moved across the room, fast but controlled. "This is what they want people to think of you. And it's working. You don't know that. I do." Her voice cracked. "Because I've lived this before. It doesn't matter what's true. The only thing that sticks is the worst version. Ivy," she held up a hand, "don't. Just don't say anything right now." He stepped back, not out of agreement, but respect. She turned and walked down the hall, closing the door behind her gently, not slamming, not storming. Just done, for now. The walls of the guest suite felt smaller than they had last week. The bed too soft, the air too clean. She sat on the edge, staring at her phone. So many missed calls. A voicemail from Clara. A message from Marshall. Even Jordan had texted her. "I'm okay. Don't worry about me. They don't know you." "I do." Her throat tightened. She blinked fast, but the tears came anyway. She hadn't cried in years, not really, not in that soul-deep, helpless way. But now it spilled out, grief for her name, for the fear on Jordan's face, for the weight of carrying herself alone for so long, only to be made into something she never asked to be. And then, a knock. Soft. Intentional. She wiped her face and opened the door. It wasn't Graham. It was Clara. Ivy blinked in surprise. "You're early." Clara raised an eyebrow. "You thought I'd let them take shots at you and not come check the damage myself?" Ivy stepped back. "Come in." Clara sat in the armchair, crossing her legs, her posture regal as ever. "It's bad. But it's not unrecoverable." "You sure about that?" "Absolutely not. But I've lived through worse scandals with weaker women, and you're not weak." "I'm tired," Ivy admitted, "of fighting for space I didn't even ask to occupy." Clara looked at her closely. "Then stop asking. Take it," Ivy laughed bitterly. "And how do I do that?" "Make a speech? Buy a billboard? You remind them who you are." "I don't even know who they are." "Then let me show you." Clara opened the tote bag beside her and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside, a document labeled Internal Ethics Complaint, submitted by Clara Whitmore. Below it, attached with a binder clip, was a printout of a spreadsheet. It listed private transfers, flagged communications, and a note in red ink. Source, V. Carrington. Confirmation pending. Ivy stared. "Is this what I think it is?" "Proof," Clara said, "that Vanessa accessed confidential personnel records. She leaked your sealed juvenile file, and likely tipped the press off about Jordan's treatment. Ivy's heart pounded. You can prove that? Not yet. But I know someone who can. They met Detective Amara Knox that afternoon in a small cafe near the precinct. She wore a tan coat, her hair pulled back, and her badge clipped just low enough to go unnoticed. Ivy, she said, offering a warm smile. You look tired. I'm exhausted. I'm not surprised. I've been watching this unfold, and honestly, she shook her head. It's personal. This isn't a smear campaign. It's a takedown. Clara leaned in. Can you help? Amara nodded. I can't stop the press. But I can confirm who accessed those records. If Vanessa used her position or any harbor link system, we'll trace it. How long will it take? Ivy asked. A few days? Maybe less, but you'll need to hold steady. Ivy exhaled slowly. I'm not sure I can. Amara studied her. You've been surviving since you were 15, Ivy. This is just another room full of people who need reminding that survival is a form of power. Ivy swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded. Back at the penthouse, Graham waited on the balcony, looking out over the harbor like he'd been there for hours. Ivy stepped out slowly, her coat still on, the cold air biting at her cheeks. Clara told me everything, he said. I didn't want her to. She said you didn't have a choice. They stood side by side in silence. Then Ivy said, What if this is too much? For who? For both of us. He looked at her. I didn't fall for the version of you that fits in a press release. She turned sharply. You fell for me? His voice caught, but he didn't back away. I think I did. Or I'm in the process. I don't know how to say it right. You think this is love? I think it's something I want to fight for. She stared at him, every part of her unsure if she should run or lean in, but then she whispered, Then fight with me, not for me. Not instead of me. He reached out, hesitated, then placed his hand lightly on hers. A promise, not a possession. And she didn't pull away. Baltimore felt different under pressure. The city had always carried a certain grit, a pulse Ivy knew how to navigate. But lately, every headline, every whispered remark on the street, every sideways glance when she passed through HarborLink's doors, it all pressed in tighter, like walls she couldn't keep from closing. She stood in the HarborLink lobby that morning, her reflection in the glass too composed for the storm beneath her skin. Her heels clicked across the tile as she moved toward the elevator, her breath steady but shallow. Her meeting with the board wasn't until 10, but she'd come early. She needed time to feel the room before the room tried to control her. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in and paused. Vanessa stood inside, already waiting. Ivy didn't flinch. She stepped in. The doors slid shut. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Vanessa tilted her head. You're early. I like to be prepared. Vanessa smirked. That won't save you. Ivy turned toward her, calm and clear. And you think smearing my name in public will? I didn't smear you. I simply revealed you. No. You exposed yourself, Ivy said softly. You showed everyone what fear looks like in red lipstick. Vanessa's smile cracked. You think a speech in a boardroom is going to change anything? No, but the truth will. Ding. The elevator stopped at 35. Ivy stepped out first, her posture tall, her stride unshaken. The boardroom was sleek, glass-walled, perched above the city like a throne. Ivy entered without hesitation. Clara was already seated. So was Gregory Alcott. 2 other board members whispered behind tablet screens. Graham hadn't arrived yet. Gregory looked up, unsurprised. Ms. Brooks. Brave of you to join us. I wasn't aware truth required bravery, she replied. Depending on the version, he said smoothly. The door opened again. Graham entered, face unreadable, a folder tucked under his arm. He greeted no one. Instead, he walked to the head of the table, opened the folder, and slid a stack of papers across the table to Gregory. These are the findings from a recent security audit, he said, voice steady, conducted by an independent forensic firm. You'll find login logs, document trails, and a list of internal access violations. Vanessa shifted in her chair. Clara folded her hands calmly. The violations show a clear breach of confidential files, including Ivy's juvenile record, sealed by court order. One of the board members frowned. This is serious, Graham nodded. So is what's been happening to this company's reputation while we look the other way. Vanessa stood. This is absurd. You're attacking me based on speculation. The audit's time-stamped, Clara said, lifting a single sheet, and tied directly to your credentials. Gregory looked at Vanessa, his voice low. Did you really think you wouldn't be caught? I did what needed to be done. No, Ivy said, her voice calm but cutting. You did what made you feel big, and now everyone can see how small it really was. The room went still. Then, quietly, Graham said, You're dismissed. Vanessa stared at him, something behind her eyes breaking, but she didn't fight it. She gathered her things in silence and left. Gregory, ever composed, turned to Ivy. You won this round. But remember, stories shift fast. Public favor is a currency with an expiration date. Ivy met his gaze. I'm not here for favor. I'm here to do the work. Gregory raised an eyebrow. Then, without a word, stood and followed Vanessa out. The boardroom exhaled with their exit. Graham turned to Ivy. You didn't have to speak. I needed to. You were fearless. No, she said, but I was finished being silent. Clara smiled, slow and proud. You reminded them what legacy looks like. Diane would have been proud. Ivy's throat tightened. She nodded, not trusting her voice. After the meeting, Graham found her by the rooftop garden, one of Diane's old ideas, left half forgotten in budget spreadsheets and maintenance rotations. The wind was gentler up there. The noise of the city felt far enough to breathe. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. We can finally breathe again. I'm not sure it's over. It's not, he said, but it's shifted. She turned to him. So what now? I want to do something more permanent, he said. Not a press release. Something real. Something that puts your name exactly where it belongs. She looked at him, unsure. I want to build a literacy center under Harbor Link's foundation. Named after you. Her heart skipped. Ivy. I don't want a name on a building, she said, his brow furrowed slightly. I want to be in the building, she continued. I want to run it. I want to hire from my neighborhood. Build programs for girls like me who never thought they'd be anything but background. He stared at her for a beat. Then, softly, he smiled. Then we do that. Together. She felt her breath catch, but not from fear, from knowing. This wasn't pretend anymore. And for the first time in a long time, her future didn't look like a staircase she'd never reach. It looked like a door she was finally ready to open. The sun was setting low over the harbor, casting golden streaks across the windows of the Harbor Link Tower. From the rooftop garden, the view stretched for miles, but Ivy barely noticed. She was sitting on the stone bench tucked beneath a row of potted lavender, the air filled with a soft hush and the scent of the city winding down. In her lap sat a letter. Yellowed slightly at the edges. Diane's name written in graceful cursive on the envelope. Clara had given it to her that morning. She wrote it after she got her diagnosis, Clara had explained, her voice soft. told me to give it to the woman who would take up her space, not just in Graham's life, but in the work she didn't get to finish. Ivy had held it for hours before opening it, and now that the words were in front of her, she couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. To the woman brave enough to stand beside him, if you're reading this, then you've already survived more than most people can imagine, and you've already made him see again. That was always the hardest part with Graham. He could lead a room but never let it lead him. But love isn't about who stands in front. It's about who's willing to stand beside, even when the light hits uneven. If you're anything like I hope, you don't need permission to take space, but I want you to know it's yours. He needs someone who doesn't flinch, someone who doesn't get dazzled, someone who reminds him he's still human. And if you have your own storms to carry, I hope he's brave enough to walk through them with you, because real love isn't the kind that saves. It's the kind that stays. Ivy closed the letter, pressing it gently against her chest. The wind caught the ends of her hair. A tear slid silently down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. "Thought I might find you up here." Graham's voice broke the quiet. Ivy didn't turn. Not right away. He stepped beside her slowly, taking the seat on the bench, leaving just enough space between them. Clara must have told him about the letter. Ivy finally looked over at him. "You know she wrote this?" "I didn't. I only found out this morning." He glanced at her hands. "I didn't ask to read it. I figured it was meant for someone stronger than me. She didn't think you needed saving." "No," he said quietly. "She just thought I needed reminding." They sat in silence for a long moment, the city alive beneath them, but the world up here, still and small. "I don't want to be a substitute," Ivy said suddenly, voice barely above a whisper. "For what she was, for what you lost. You're not. She was grace, purpose." "And she hesitated. "I'm loud where she was quiet. I'm grit where she was light." Graham turned toward her. "She was grace because she had to be. She was light because the world demanded she carry more than her share of darkness. But you," he paused, "you are who you are, and that's exactly what I want." Ivy's eyes searched his. "Even if I keep asking hard questions? Even if I never stop pushing back?" "Especially then." The wind tugged gently at her coat. She felt her heart breaking open in a way that wasn't pain, but release. "Jordan asked me last night," she said, smiling faintly, "if you were my real boyfriend or just the temporary kind." Graham's lips curved. "And what did you say?" "I told him I hadn't decided yet." He nodded slowly, his tone soft. "And now?" She turned to him, eyes serious. "Now I'm deciding that I don't want temporary." Something in his expression cracked open. Tension she hadn't known was there. His shoulders dropped slightly. His hand, careful, reached for hers on the bench. She let him take it. He didn't rush, just held it like it mattered. "Whatever happens next," she said, voice steady, "I want it to be real. I want it to be rooted not in headlines, not in pity, but in choice." He leaned in, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. "Then let me choose you. Fully. No press, no agenda, just me." Her breath hitched. "I'm not easy to love," she whispered. "Neither am I," he said. "But we don't need easy. We need honest." She let herself lean into him, just enough to feel his shoulder, the place where her guard finally fell. For the first time since this began, Ivy wasn't standing on the outside of someone else's world. She was building one, with someone who wasn't trying to save her, only stay. The walls of the new community center were still bare. Fresh drywall painted a clean, hopeful white. Dust clung to the air, soft in the beams of late afternoon light streaming through the oversized windows. It smelled like sawdust and promise. Ivy walked slowly through the main room, blueprint in one hand, a pencil tucked behind her ear. She'd been there all day, reviewing layouts, talking to contractors, rearranging classroom spaces on the fly. Her boots left light marks on the floor. She'd clean them later, she always did. She stopped in front of a wall near the entrance. Her name would go there, the Ivy Brooks Center for Literacy Leadership, etched into the marble Graham insisted on ordering. She hadn't agreed yet. Something about it still felt too loud. She touched the space gently, like she was asking it permission. Behind her, a familiar voice filled the quiet. "You always think with your hands first." She turned, lips curving into a slow smile. Graham stood at the threshold, sleeves rolled, coat slung over one shoulder. He looked tired in that honest kind of way. No boardroom gloss, no curated charm, just him. "Is that your way of saying I overthink everything?" she asked. "No," he said, stepping inside. "It's my way of saying you feel before you move." "And that's rare." She arched an eyebrow. "You here to compliment me or talk me into something again?" He smiled. "Maybe both." She turned back to the wall. "It still feels strange, putting my name on something. You've earned it." "I'm not sure if I've earned this much of it." Graham stepped beside her, his gaze following hers to the blank space. "I've watched you turn rooms around with nothing but your voice. You've brought kids from 2 blocks over who'd never set foot in this neighborhood. You've built something that doesn't just exist. It belongs." Ivy's jaw tightened. "It's not about my name. It's about making sure it lasts. Then let it carry your name. So when the next Ivy walks through that door, she knows she doesn't have to shrink." She exhaled, long and quiet. Her fingers brushed the blueprint again, grounding herself. Graham reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her heart skipped. He didn't open it. He just held it out. "This isn't a grand gesture. No photographers. No gala, just you and me and a decision." She stared at the box, her throat tightening. "I'm not asking you to become someone else," he continued. "I'm asking you to let me walk beside whoever you already are. Not because you need me, but because I want to be the one who keeps showing up." Silence stretched between them. Heavy, honest, she didn't take the box. Instead, she stepped closer and laid a hand flat on his chest. "You know I won't leave myself behind for this. I don't want you to. I need room to keep building, to keep growing. You'll have it." Her voice dropped. "I want this, but not in the way people expect it. Not in a dress someone else picked out. Not with the kind of ring that comes with obligations." Graham looked down, opened the box. Inside was a ring. Modest, elegant, simple white gold with a deep blue stone, not a diamond. No glitter, no noise, just hers. She blinked, stunned. "It's not flashy," he said, "but it's steady." She reached for the box, gently closed it. "I'm not saying yes to the ring yet," she whispered. "I didn't expect you to, but I'm saying yes to us, to what we've started." He smiled, wide and soft. "Then that's everything." They stood in the center of the room, unfinished, imperfect, alive with potential. Ivy looked around, breathing it in. "You know what I want more than my name on that wall?" she said suddenly. "What?" "A shelf of books by girls who never thought they'd write one. A room full of boys who learn how to speak up without fear. Jordan teaching younger kids to use their voice." Graham nodded. "We'll build that shelf. We'll build all of it." She leaned into him, her forehead brushing his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, steady and warm. No pressure, just presence. It wasn't about the proposal. It wasn't about the building. It was about something harder. Quieter. Choosing each other, even when the cameras stopped flashing. Even when there was dust on the floor and decisions to make and dreams still forming. Especially then. The rain came soft that evening, thin mist barely visible in the amber glow of the streetlights, but it brought a hush over the city, as if Baltimore itself was holding its breath. Ivy stood beneath the small overhang outside the diner where it had all started. Gorman's hadn't changed. Same flickering neon sign, same scratched counter stools inside. The place where she'd once counted tips with shaking fingers and whispered silent prayers over leftover soup. Now she stood taller, more certain, coat buttoned against the drizzle, holding a paper cup of tea that had gone lukewarm in her hands. She wasn't there for nostalgia. She was waiting. The bell above the door jingled softly behind her. "I knew you'd be early," Graham said, stepping into the space beside her. She didn't look at him right away. Just took a breath and said, "I needed to see where it started." "Where we started?" She gave a small nod. "You accused me of theft. I told you not to touch me." He chuckled under his breath. "And now here we are. Neither one of us listening." She turned to him, a real smile breaking through. "We didn't make sense on paper, Graham." "Still don't. I stopped caring about paper the moment you walked out of that interrogation room with your chin high and your shoes soaked." They stood in silence again, just listening to the rain. She finally spoke. "Clara told me Diane used to come here sometimes. Alone, after late meetings, just to be where real people were." "She did," Graham said. "She used to say the diner had better truth than any boardroom." Ivy looked down at the steam curling from her cup. "I think that's what scared me the most. That I'd never live up to her. That I'd just be another name passing through." "You've never passed through anything, Ivy." His voice was quieter now. "You leave your mark. You change rooms." "You change me." She met his eyes then, and there was no distance between them anymore. "I kept the ring," she said. "I know, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to say yes just because everything felt finally safe." He waited, breath held. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the velvet box. Opened it. "I'm not saying yes to the version of us that lives in headlines," she said, "or the one that's built on fixing what's broken." His voice caught. "Then what version are you saying yes to?" "I'm saying yes to the slow version. The kind that shows up when the lights are off, when the dishes need doing, when your mother calls at 7 a.m. just to check in." A beat passed, and then, softly, "I'm saying yes to the kind of love that stays." The sound he made wasn't quite a laugh or a breath. It was both, a release. She slipped the ring on, and it felt like more than a symbol. It felt like the beginning of a life no longer lived in defense. Graham reached for her hand, lifted it gently to his lips. "Then I promise," he said, voice rough, "to keep showing up." They stayed like that, the two of them beneath the soft mist of rain, standing in front of the past, like it was just another door they'd walk through, together. From the diner window, Marshall watched them for a moment, then shook his head with a smile. "Took them long enough," he muttered, and poured another cup of coffee. Across the street, the city moved on, horns in the distance, shoes tapping sidewalks. Nothing paused for love, but Ivy did, and maybe for the first time, she wasn't rushing toward survival. She was choosing something else, something slower, something that stayed. The ceremony wasn't extravagant. That was never the plan. It was held in the community garden behind the literacy center, still half-finished, but vibrant with the colors of early spring. Fresh mulch, budding daffodils, paper lanterns strung between fence posts like soft punctuation in the air. Ivy had chosen the spot herself. She didn't want chandeliers. She wanted earth beneath her feet and the sound of wind threading through leaves. Jordan walked her down the aisle. He wasn't in a suit, just a crisp white shirt and a navy tie he'd tied himself. His steps were slow, a little awkward, but steady. She clutched his arm, like it was the only thing keeping her from floating away. "You nervous?" he whispered, grinning up at her. "I've had worse mornings," she said softly, and squeezed his hand. At the front, Graham waited. No tux, just a slate-grey jacket, an open collar, standing under a modest arch wrapped in ivy and string lights. His expression when he saw her held no bravado, just awe, like he was seeing something too good for words. There were maybe 30 people there. Clara sat in the front row, her hand resting on a small framed photo of Diane. Marshall stood off to the side, hands clasped, blinking too often. A few of Ivy's former co-workers from Gorman's, a couple of Graham's staff, several local teachers from the neighborhood, all of them witnesses to something that felt less like a performance and more like a vow to build forward. The officiant began, but Ivy barely heard the words. Her heart thudded too loudly, not with panic, but with something sacred. Not fear, not doubt, just the weight of choosing. When it came time for vows, Graham went first. No paper, no rehearsal. "I used to think love had to be clean," he said, voice steady but raw. "Polished, easy to explain. But then I met you. And I realized, real love leaves room for mistakes, for learning, for growing without losing yourself. Ivy, you made me see again, not just the world, but myself. And if you'll let me, I want to keep seeing it all, with you." Ivy blinked fast, biting back emotion. When it was her turn, she didn't reach for a script either. "I never imagined this," she began, her voice cracking slightly. "Not because I didn't believe in love, but because I didn't think love could find someone like me. I grew up thinking I had to earn every inch of space I took up. But you didn't just make room. You handed me the keys." She looked down at their joined hands. "I'm not perfect. I still struggle, but I want to keep showing up. For you, for us, not just when it's easy. Especially when it's not." They exchanged rings, simple bands, nothing flashy. Hers had a small engraving inside. We stayed, and then it was done. No music, no big kiss for the cameras. Just the hush of leaves and soft applause and the quiet thrum of something real sinking in. Later, they sat on folding chairs under the garden lights, plates balanced on their laps, eating lemon cake made by one of the neighborhood moms Ivy had met during construction. Jordan was on his third slice. "You're really married now," he said, mouth full. Ivy looked over at Graham, who'd removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He was helping a little girl string a paper star for the wish tree in the center of the yard. "Yeah," Ivy murmured. "I really am." Jordan leaned closer. "You happy?" She didn't answer right away, because happiness wasn't loud. It was this, the breeze, the warmth of her brother beside her. The way Graham glanced over every few minutes like he couldn't quite believe she hadn't vanished. The way her name felt safe in his mouth. The way the city hummed in the distance, not threatening, not closing in, but simply there. "I'm peaceful," she said finally. Jordan nodded. "That's better." As the evening faded into stars, someone turned on a speaker and a soft song floated into the garden. Ivy stood, brushed the crumbs from her dress, and walked to Graham. "Dance with me?" she asked. He didn't answer. He just took her hand, pulled her gently into the circle of his arms, and held her like she was home. They moved slow. No rhythm. No rush. Just two people who knew what it meant to stay. The morning light streamed through the tall windows of the Ivy Brooks Literacy Center, casting soft gold onto the floorboards, as if the sun itself was paying respect. It was opening day. Ivy stood in the main lobby, palms pressed to her thighs to still the nerves, her breath slow but sure. Outside, a crowd was gathering. Families, students, neighbors, press, even a few curious onlookers from the city council. She'd written a speech, folded it twice, then tucked it away in the drawer of her desk. She wouldn't be reading from it. This place didn't need a performance. It needed truth. Graham was adjusting the microphone at the podium just outside the front doors. He looked over at her through the glass, and when their eyes met, he gave her the smallest nod. No pressure, just presence. She stepped outside, the air brisk with early spring, the scent of fresh mulch and new beginnings all around. The crowd quieted when she took her place. She didn't speak right away, just looked out across the people, faces that had doubted her, defended her, depended on her. Clara stood near the front, hands clasped, eyes glassy but proud. Jordan stood beside her, wearing his best shirt and an oversized name badge that read, Program Assistant. Ivy took a breath. When I was 16, she said, voice clear, I stopped going to the library. The crowd shifted slightly. Not because I didn't want to, but because every time I walked in, I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't speak the right way. I didn't dress the right way. I didn't move through the world the way people expected readers to move. A pause. No script, just memory. So I stopped reading for a while. I stopped dreaming too, because what's the point of a dream if the door to it stays locked? She glanced at the building behind her. This place is the key I needed back then. And today, I'm giving it away. A murmur of warmth rippled through the crowd. This center is not about saving people. It's about reminding them they've never been broken. Not really, just waiting to be seen. She looked at Jordan, then at Clara, then at Graham. This building carries my name, but it belongs to all of us. To the girl who doesn't speak above a whisper. To the boy too nervous to write his name in ink. To every adult who told themselves it was too late to begin again. It's not a beat. It never is. Applause swelled, genuine and full. Ivy stepped back from the mic and let the weight of it settle in her chest. Not pressure, just peace. Later, after the ribbon was cut and the doors opened and the halls filled with the hum of curiosity and joy, Ivy stood in the reading room alone for a moment. It smelled of fresh paint and new books. Shelves were half-stocked, but already fingerprints smudged the tabletops. Signs of life. She ran her fingers along the spines. One book caught her eye. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. She smiled. That had been Diane's favorite. Clara had donated the original copy from her daughter's nightstand. I figured I'd find you here, Graham said from the doorway. She turned, her expression soft. I needed a second. Take all the time you want. You built this. We built this. He walked toward her, hands in his pockets. You realize you changed everything, right? She looked around. Not everything. The city's still loud. The bills still come, but I changed something that matters, and that's enough. He stopped beside her, reaching out gently to take her hand. You're enough. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. She just nodded. I know. And you are too. They stood together, hand in hand, in a room full of unwritten pages. The door opened behind them and Jordan peeked in. Ivy, someone wants to meet you. She raised an eyebrow. Who? A girl. Said she heard your speech. She wants to sign up. But she's scared. I think she needs you. Ivy looked at Graham, then back at Jordan. Tell her I'm coming. Jordan grinned and disappeared. Ivy turned to Graham. This is the part I was meant for. Not the headlines. Not the gala nights. This, the hard work. The quiet wins. I know, he said, and I'll keep showing up, right here beside you. She leaned in, kissed him softly. No spectacle, no urgency. Just an honest, steady thing between them. Then she stepped out of the reading room and into the hallway, toward the next girl who didn't know how brave she already was. The wind picked up outside, stirring the flag at the entrance. Sunlight poured through the windows, catching on the words carved above the front door. The Ivy Brooks Center, for those who stay. And inside, among the shelves, the echoes of new voices began to rise. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought matters to me either way.